Less than 30 seconds now in regulation. Could this take extra time? 16 seconds. Here's Dyal. Send it up the point, J. Lalu. Call midget now, but Matt, 6 seconds, 5, Dalfan coming out. He gets around him, 2 seconds. He's got to do it quick. Judith scores, 1 second left.
This intro never fails to make me happy. Literally ever. How you doing, Tony?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
You know, I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. Still have a nice, scar in my head, but we work with what we've got sometimes. So
There's a couple other HQM players I'm pretty sure have big scars on their head from
yeah,
various
big,
brain-related
yeah,
activity.
yeah. Yeah, that is definitely the case, and certainly was the case for a long time. But then again, I feel like it has to take a certain type of person, likely missing some form of cognitive ability, to be willing to play HQM and care about it for as long
Yeah.
as a lot of us
Speaking
have.
of, you're back. You
Uh,
weren't
kind,
last time we
kind
did
of,
one of
kind
these.
of. I haven't played yet. I
No,
haven't played yet,
no, but you're
but
you're s- you're
I
on the
am
team. You're
signed up.
signed up to play.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
The plan is to play on, I'm guessing, Tuesday.
Yeah, I will be there on Tuesday, so.
Cool.
Is it cool? I don't know.
Well,
I
for
don't know yet.
for
We'll
some of
find
us.
out when I actually hop on the ice. So, but the Lord of the Rinks thing, Tony, I gotta say
Yeah.
that was pretty hilarious.
Yeah, it was good. Payne, he made that photo. I came up with the idea and lacked the talent to do anything about it. So I sent it over to him and he was like, gotcha, done it. So that picture that appears at the end of it, the whole reason why I made it is that's thanks to Payne Retsky.
Should
The most
we
important thing he's working on right now.
should we play it on here? Would it be is it worth playing at the start of this, do you think, or no?
Yeah, sure, that'd be funny.
Okay. Let me get it open and try to get like a fucking good screen cap of it.
Grab the picture, the Photoshop there.
Yep, so with the first pick.
Okay, let me get full screen. And now, do I have any other scenes for this? I have no fucking idea. Let's create one.
It's great audio here.
Yeah, this is good stuff. This is real good stuff.
Do you want me to bring up the topic while you're getting this?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Sure. All right, perfect. We're very professional
While
here.
we have a nice black screen in the background or
Yeah.
something, so.
All right. So our main talking point today is we're going to be discussing kind of why the game died out, what could have been different, and whether or not there's a way back from here. And yeah, we love talking about this, of speculating why this existed to begin with and where we went wrong.
Yeah, correct. And before I play the video here, just to sort of clarify, Tony and I really enjoyed doing the last episode, the nice 3.5 hour long one, which if you made it through all of that, congratulations. Please seek mental help. Um, for those who didn't, I'm proud of you for not finishing it. But yeah, so we enjoyed doing it, and we figured now is as good a time as any to start getting into this a little more regularly. We're going to try out a few different variations on trying to release a bit more, hopefully easily digestible content that's a bit
As in
shorter.
not 3.5 hours long.
Yeah, a little bit shorter every single one of these times to try to reduce the strain that it takes to digest all of this. So that's the goal for now. And as Tony said, we're going to start out with sort of taking a look at probably one of the most pertinent or relevant topics at the moment, which is, the game's inevitable. I mean, I think it's fair to call it a death. I mean, it died. Not that it was ever thriving, at least, relative to other games, but still, it did die, and talking about that, talking about why that happened, what, if anything, could have been done to fix that, and then sort of what happens now. Is there a way back? If there is, what might that look like? What would the potential of a new game coming into the space look like? Paint. Finish it. So those are little things that we want to touch on as well. But real quick before we get into that, I think I have the capture going for the uh, Lord of the Rings, which we'll watch real quick.
In the Season 11
So-
NHL draft, the Chicago Blackhawks are proud to select Dyal.
I'd like to select Dyal.
And playing it is I see Meat Cell getting in on the action too. They're all coming in. They shot the score! Top shelf where Mama keeps the cookies.
Shot, and it's going to be wide. Dyal is in front for the tip. Kiwi chips it wide. And now Ribbon X board pass. Dyal cutting through. Dyal with a chance. Shoot, scores! And Dyal devastating the opposition.
And some favorites among those. You'd have to say it's probably going to come down to either Dyal or KS Auto, but you can't count any of these other guys out of here. It's going to be Dyal!
All right, so I just had to give props to to Payne and Tony for coming up with that. That was very, very funny, very entertaining, and very touching. Wow, thank you. Um, so that was amazing.
Makes
but
it all
yes,
worth it.
yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so let's get right into it. So we want to start with specifically, what happened. Where did things kind of go wrong? And in order to really like set the sort of, I don't want to say tone, but paint the picture here. I do want to bring up on screen while we're chatting about this a graph that shows the signups in all the various LHL related seasons, and then also the tournaments that happened afterwards. So there was a number of them. If you remember, I think Crab had one at the beginning, then I did one. Kiwi, you and or Kiwi, Tony, you and Kiwi did one, or led one, however you want to call that. And then after that, we've had this Friday Night Hockey returns thing going on, which is on the third season, right? We're up to three.
The third iteration, third month,
Gotcha.
I guess you'd call it.
Yep. And if I could get the image to fucking show up, that would be cool. Hold on. Okay, there we go. We got it. Okay, so
Flawless.
yeah, it took me a second, but we're good. All right, so I'm gonna have that up on screen so that we can sort of take a look at that and work through that. And for those of you who are just listening, I will read it off to you when it actually comes time for discussion about that. But for now, I want to kick it over to Tony, sort of just capture your overarching thoughts as to just some key bullet points as to what do you think happened, and then I'll give mine. We'll kind of break it down from there.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, well, to start it off, I was BOC for relatively a very long time in terms of BOC.
I think in terms
uh,
of consistent tenure, not taking any breaks, I think you were the longest
I
lasting.
I think so.
Because I think
This
I did
right
a
before season
similar.
12.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I did a similar number of seasons as BOC, but a lot of those were pretty disjointed. Basically, anytime I was a GM, I was not doing it. So
Yeah.
there was a lot of like I'd do it for 2 seasons and take a break for a season or two, and a lot of rotations like that. So, but yeah, you did it for quite a long time.
Yeah, I did it for quite a while. So, and obviously this is like going on years ago, and I don't have the actual signups in front of me anymore. Um, but I saw it at I saw a lot of real highs as POC, and I definitely saw the steady decline, which kind of resulted in it falling apart towards the end. Which, I mean,
Yeah.
people look at the graph, you see the season 18 as kind of, that might look like the point where, oh, that's bad, and it was. And I remember we were thinking then that that might be it.
Yeah, and we'll
And
we'll we'll definitely touch on that when we
yeah,
break into it more, because
touch on
that
that one
that
later.
was the real start of the end there, season 18. So
Yeah, we were losing some players here and there. You could always lose players and kind of push through, but by the end, we weren't really replacing them like we were before.
no, absolutely, absolutely. It was a key issue that was pervasive throughout the entire history of the game, and that's really it's to me, it was kind of a mix of that, or of two things. It was, player retention, um, which I guess it kind of all falls under that umbrella of player retention. But the big thing was the experienced players are getting burnt out and not playing the game anymore. Several of them started taking seasons off as we got towards the end. They take one season off, then come back the next one. Some of them took several seasons off. Some of them outright stopped playing. So there's a mix of that, and then also of us not being able to bring in enough new people. And that sort of gets into the recruitment issue side of things, which is definitely a topic we'll have to touch on here as well. But it was a mix of a lot of things like that on the whole. And the signups, which is the graph we're looking at here, is the player signups for the LHL seasons or tournaments. Over a course of time. So just to read them off now so that everybody gets the numbers for those who are listening, we started out in season 1 of the LHL with 44. Season 2 had 52. Season 3 had 72. Season 4 was 79. Season 5 was 87. Season 6 was 87. Season 7 was 88. And then we had our first big spike with our first recruitment wave that was like really successful on Reddit. For those who aren't aware or weren't around for a lot of that, the majority of our recruitments were done as Reddit threads to places like our hockey. So that brought us all the way up to 150 people, which was the peak we ever had for the LHL, RSL, JSL, and that was season 8. Season 9, we were down to 120, followed by 117, 127, 119, 110, 106, another big spike to 149 in season 15, then down to 107, which was the biggest drop off we'd ever had over the course of one season. So that was season 16, we had a 107. Season 17, we had 91. Season 18, we dropped all the way down to 69, which was the lowest number of signups we had had since LHL season 2. Season 19, after we took a couple month break, we were able to bring it back up to 86. But at the end of season 19, there were a lot of people, myself included, that really were thinking we're either done or it's time for a longer break. And then in the tournaments we've had afterwards over the past just under 2 years since LHL season 19. We had 39 for the tournament Crab ran. We had 54 for the tournament I ran. We had 56 for Kiwi and Tony's. Then for the Friday Night Hockey seasons, we've had 29, 39, and 44 consecutively. Again, which are all smaller numbers than even LHL season 1 was. So we're definitely back down towards the bottom here at this point in
Yeah.
time.
Of
But
course, it's not posted or public. It's just sort
Correct.
of
There's not open signups
what's
for
left.
everybody, so there's context there. And also, we are gradually, the more this has gone on, the more people have been coming back to play in this, so that is a positive sign. But anyway, so running through all the numbers here, you could see the drop-offs in player signups was really the first like indicating sign, and this is as good a time as any to start talking about season 18 when we only had 69 signups for that. And Tony was BOC at the time, and he can certainly tell you to a much greater level of detail than I can. But pretty much any of you who watch this will know that Tony used to go around like a freaking hawk messaging anybody who had signed up previously and saying, "Hey, hey,
Yeah,
hey,
yeah.
check out these LHL signups,
Uh,
huh? Huh?
I'm
Huh?
sure people.
Wink, wink,
I'm sure
nudge, nudge."
the handful that listen to this are probably people who personally got those
Oh yeah,
messages.
I was one of them for two
Yeah.
of those seasons. I was one of
Well,
them.
yeah.
So
Well, for season 18, I don't think you said it, but season 18, right after 17, Dial was ready to call it quits, and that was, I think, you honestly were like planning on not playing season 18,
yeah,
and I knew if that happened, that would be it, and so I fought real hard to get him signed up. That was the main focus. Guy wasn't that bad because guy's usually, well, he was always tricky. He'd always say he wasn't going to come back. But season 18, he came up with that name Stanky Dangles and immediately signed up. Like this, I was with him when he thought of it, and then he signed up like within the minute, just because he
amazing.
loved that name so
Yeah,
much. That's all it takes for some people. But yeah, 18, that was brutal. Even 17, 17 was another season where I was really pushing to get signups. I was trying to get anybody I could, which I think like Dick Doug, somebody who didn't really play, I think he came back for it. He was on our Anaheim team on the bench. Like
that sounds
I got
familiar.
I
Yeah, I
got
think he
some weird
was.
ones.
Yeah. There were some
I
there were
got
some
some
odd ones
weird return.
to
Yeah.
inflate the numbers a bit there, and it was the same deal in 19 too. 19 again after winning in season 18, I was ready to, let's go out on top, but you sucked me in
You
once
sure
again for season
sure didn't
19.
do that. Sure
So,
did not go out on top.
yeah, thanks for that.
It's mostly Eric's fault, not mine.
That's true. That is true. Anyway, yeah, so kind of paints the picture for you, but there was a lot of discussion even when I wasn't planning on coming back. I was helping out Tony as like, in some fashion to at least be sort of like an advisor role, and that was something that, he and the rest of the current BOC at the time and myself were all concerned about. Seeing only 69 signups for that season, it was pretty bad. It was pretty evident that a lot of people either weren't coming back or needed a break, which is why we took that time off into season 19. But um, one thing to sort of keep in mind, which the context provided, or which provides more context than what these outright numbers here do for signups, is it's not just about number of players, at least when it comes to running an LHL season, or a successful LHL season. It's also about the like quality of players too. And that's not to say that any of the people that signed up were, shitty or anything like that. But there's a clear difference between, if you get Taze to sign up versus if you get somebody who's like an RSL starter to sign up, right? Like that's a stark difference in quality for what they bring to the game. And there's a certain point to which where the talent was starting to get watered down a lot too, which just not only is it's not as fun to watch as a spectator, it's not as fun to play in because the quality of games is lower, um, and it really put an emphasis on having like as many high tier players as possible. Not that that ever wasn't an emphasis before, but the whole point of us moving to 5v5 was to start to evolve the game more and also prevent one or two players from dominating the game and being able to sort of just like win a season by themselves, which was a huge problem in 4v4. A lot of open ice, it's really easy to do that. And in 5v5, when the talent became so watered down, you started to see kind of similar trends happening again. And it was almost like if you didn't have, if you didn't have at least one of these top scoring players, like, Otto, Meatzel, myself, if you didn't have one of those top scoring players, you basically weren't contending for a championship. And if you had two or somehow more, the championship was almost yours by default just because everybody else had won at the most. And that was definitely a problem in keeping things interesting and in keeping things fun. And it's certainly something that, like, it contributed to people not wanting to deal with it anymore. Because we all know how unfun it is being on a non-playoff team, on a team that feels like it doesn't have a chance, right? Like it's hard to do that. And when our LHL seasons are 3 months long too, including off season and playoffs, like you're kind of stuck in that situation for a while. And there's a lot of players that, were starters and non-starters that really started to lose interest because of that, being stuck in that situation. So, okay, so we touched on a lot of the reasons why things started to collapse a bit more, and at least why we think a lot of the people started to fade away. So let's start to move into the next section of it, which is, could anything have been done to prevent that or to kind of stem the tide? Because a lot of
Yeah.
people wanted to see us make it to season 20, and seeing that we improved up in signups from 18 to 19 up to 86 again was a positive development. But like I said earlier, a lot of the opinions after 19 were kind of negative still.
Yeah.
So I'll throw it to you again, Tony, since I've been talking here for probably 30 minutes on
Yeah.
my own.
Yeah.
Um,
Sorry about that.
what?
Yeah.
No, it's not your fault at all. I ramble a lot when it comes to hockey, as everybody who watches this knows. Uh, so, do you think that there's anything that could have been done to prevent this or to kind of reverse the trend, so to speak?
Yeah. So, yeah, you know what? I remember when it happened. Well, I think during that season 19 too. Oh, I'm sure you know. A handful of people know. I mean, you probably even people listen to this, but if you don't, during season 19 was kind of when we figured, like, I don't know at what point exactly, but at some time during season 19 we realized that was probably going to be it. And these are kind of like me on the VOC and Cap, and you, even though you weren't on the VOC, but sort of like the leaders in the LHL had lost interest for really the first time when I think none of us were really interested in doing a season 20. And we'd speculated that if the game were to end, if the LHL were to end, we would do a break and we would see if we wanted to come back to it.
Mm.
And we knew that if it was going to end, we'd go on this break and we'd just never want to come back. And that is just what happened. But like, I guess if you and I wanted to keep going, we probably would have done a season 20 right there and probably would have had signups. Probably not as bad as season 18. It probably would have hovered at
Yeah,
that level
yeah. So I
that season
agree.
19 was at.
I think, and we kind of started to explore that a bit with both Crab's tournament and my tournament. And in between both of those, there were a couple of surveys that were put out to gauge community interest in the potential of us getting another season to go with. So to like add some numbers to that, we had a survey from Lewis, which was the first one that happened, and I think that was after Crab's tournament, if I remember correctly, about returning to season 20. And that was an interest survey, which only got 46 responses. And Crab's tournament was about, I want to say, like a month after the LHL season 19 ended, when it was clear that we didn't have any plans to make a season 20 anytime soon. If I remember correctly, too, that tournament didn't even finish, right? That went into like the
Uh,
the winter break and then like kind of just fizzled out.
oh, maybe. I don't remember. I might not have played in that. I
I,
don't
I,
really
I seem to recall,
remember.
because I didn't play in it either, and I seem to recall hearing that it spanned over the winter break for that tournament, and that once the winter break was over, because I think that was one where you had to like
Yeah,
schedule
I
your
seem
own
to remember
games or
that.
something, that the games kind of just didn't really happen after that.
Yeah.
And Crab's
Yeah, I
tournament, for
think they
reference,
like I
had
think they had games that weren't played. I think they had rescheduled games going into that break that hadn't been played yet.
yeah, and they just never finished
So,
it. Yeah.
yeah, just a backlog.
Yep. So that had 39 signups after 86 for season 19, and then 46 responses to the Lewis survey. before I put out my survey before my tournament, which my survey had 66 responses to it as another interest survey, not signups. And then my actual tournament signups only yielded 54 after that. So that's kind of the train of events leading in there. So we probably could have forced, well, I'm not gonna say probably, we definitely could have forced an LHL season out of that. I don't think there would have been enough to have an RSL. We had already cut out the JSL by that point, just due to a lack of players. But I'm very confident in saying there would not have even been an RSL at that point. Uh, but there was just a lack of interest in it from a lot of people, ourselves included. And not to harp on the same point again, but I think it would have been watered down a lot. And I was always of the opinion that the LHL should be the pinnacle of North American hockey, question mark. And it sounds, yeah, like a little bit pretentious to say that, I understand, but to the extent of like we want it to be the peak level of competition available to you in North America. It's supposed to be something that is the highest level of that, to get the most out of those players and give the players like, the two of us here, the opportunity to demonstrate what they have to offer and to explore, what the game is capable of to its maximum extent. And that was a lot of
Mhm.
fun. And when you start to lose a lot of the key players that make that possible, it really takes away from the enjoyment of it. And I always felt that having a forced LHL season was all, I don't want to say disrespectful, but in a way kind of disrespectful to what the LHL used to be, and to sort of like, in quotes, the memory of the LHL, right? Like
Mhm.
I want to remember the LHL for being awesome and for being, hyper competitive and really fun, even though it was really stressful, and not for being just kind of like something we wanted to do just because we wanted to reach that milestone of saying, hey, we did 20 seasons. So
Yeah.
I
And
definitely
especially
agree.
it's 2 years later too is another thing. Like even if I'm not saying it's not like on the table right now, like, but it, I don't know. Like we can all bring leagues back if we want, but it doesn't have to be LHL. A lot of people want that. They say call this, call it Friday Night Hockey, do LHL, call it LHL, do something. And I'm always like, it doesn't. Is it even the LHL anymore? Like I feel like the LHL's, it's done. It's in the past. I don't know,
Yeah,
but
I would say at this point it's almost too late to have a season 20. If you're gonna have if we were gonna have anything similar to the LHL come back in terms of like with competitive tournament, drafted teams, stats, streams, the whole gambit, right? If we were gonna do something like that, I think it would have to be its own new entity. Um,
yeah,
certainly would have many ties to the LHL for obvious reasons, but
yeah,
getting that back again is not as simple at this point as just, us putting out signups or anybody putting out signups. It's really on the community at large to actually make it happen. And by that I mean getting people to sign up and play for it.
yeah,
That's the biggest hurdle that anybody would run into at this point trying to create a new tournament. Certainly something of the similar stature to the LHL, where you
yeah.
really like you need 30 starters at a minimum, and to make sure you have enough for every
Six
single
goalies.
team. Yeah, exactly. To make sure you have enough for every single team, you probably want like four backups too. So you're looking at like 54 players that you need signed up at a bare minimum to be able to get a 6-team tournament going. Um, and reaching that number is possible, but challenging if you don't get enough, positive feedback to it. And unfortunately, that just hasn't been the case in the last like 2 years. So,
Yeah,
but that,
it
which
is looking,
we're getting better.
right.
We're getting better.
Right now we're kind of playing ourselves into game shape here. I mean, a few of us have I mean, the community's been dead and the game, like the competitive games are gone. But like people have, we've had a handful that have been playing, frequently enough over the last couple of years,
Yeah, and there's been pubs
and it's
going on
just yeah,
again, right, and stuff like that.
yeah.
So it's
Pubs are back.
yeah, it's clinging on here.
Yeah,
But personally, I don't think it's enough at the moment. I think for us to be
No.
able to get back to anything like what we used to, we would need one of two things, which really is more the primary than the latter, but we would need a lot more of the old veterans to come back. And I just mean, this right now, when
Yeah.
you're this low on numbers, it's purely a numbers game. You just need more bodies. So we just need more people that are, capable of playing the game to come back
Yeah.
and play. The second one, which we can start getting into this now too, would be bringing in new players. And this is
I get asked about that a lot.
yeah, so this is something that we've spoken about a lot, you and I separately, but I've also brought this up with numerous people on previous broadcasts, interviews, um, the previous like Face-Off podcast things that we did, like Dick Dug and I used to do. Recruitment has always been a point of discussion, for good reason. And to again to paint the picture, I mentioned it earlier, but the way we used to recruit is via Reddit threads. So we go to various subreddits, namely our hockey and to a lesser extent our EA NHL. There are a few other ones that we tried as well to put out posts to say like, hey, come check out this game and play with us. But without having any backing from the game developer, without having much in the way of a financial backing to work with and for any form of like proper advertising, and just the general shittiness of the game in terms of the way it looks, lack of good models, lack of animations, just how
There's no
clunky it
sound.
looks. Yeah, no sound at all. A lot of those things are made it really hard to get people to look at the game for longer than a few seconds and get them to look at it long enough to even try downloading it. Um, YouTube also proved decently well for us for some videos. We had a couple from like Matt and whatnot that got a few thousand views, but nothing ever like really took off like to a crazy extent. And we got to the point with the Reddit threads where we had posted so many times over the years that the threads were starting to fall on deaf ears. And we weren't getting a similar response that we used to see from those recruitments, which was, obviously disappointing to say the least. But, it makes sense. We had kind of run our course with that, unfortunately. So we had always searched for new opportunities for us to be able to exercise like different avenues to get in new people, but those are really tough to find with all the constraints that I mentioned earlier. And a lot of what we were kind of banking on in the end was YouTube and also Twitch to a lesser extent. We had tried to bring in a couple external people that were, sort of lower tier Twitch streamers that would have, 10 to 20 people that might view them on a regular basis, bringing them in to start casting some of our games to sort of mutually help exposure to their stream while also helping expose the game a little bit to an audience that may or may not have some ties to it. There were a few Twitch streamers and YouTubers that had significantly larger followings, whether it's in the couple thousands or even in one or two cases like 10,000 or so, that we had hoped to leverage more, but we were never able to get any interest from them by like tweeting at them and stuff like that. And I can't remember some of the names of them now at this point. Lucic was actually one of the people that was one of the
Ice Poseidon.
well,
He
okay,
wanted.
yes, Ice Poseidon.
He
There
wanted.
there were a few others not Ice Poseidon that were like EA NHL players and stuff and Twitch streamers.
Yeah, that
Um,
would have been better.
yeah, so there were some of those that we looked at, and I think a couple of them had been reached out to, but we never got much in the way of response to that at all. And one of the big things that you kind of have to do with a lot of people like that have a somewhat larger following is if you want them to play a game, you typically have to pay them to play it, or they have to really take an interest in it. And again, because the game looks so shitty, it's hard to get people to want to play hockey question mark. And I still have the $427.58, whatever the fuck it is, that's sitting in the LHL PayPal account. I haven't done anything with it, and we were happy to put that
Mhm.
towards supporting a Twitch streamer to come play. but that's not really enough money to get people to come do those things most of the time, or at least not enough money to get them to come like stream it or make a YouTube video about it. But we were willing to even have somebody come in and shred the game and put a YouTube video up about how bad it is, just because it literally any publicity would have been good for us at that point in time.
Yeah, that would have been even better.
Yeah, but yeah. So to get back to the original point, there's really not a great way, given the constraints we have right now, to broadcast this to more people and to get more people interested and excited. And that was the same way back then as it is right now. And it's an unfortunate side effect of what we're dealing with. But basically, unless we could ever get Cryptic on board, there's virtually no chance of that ever happening, as unfortunate as that is to say.
Yeah. Also, not before we uh, quite get off the topic of recruitment, not directly related to our problems with it, but when all this the COVID stuff happened and everybody went on lockdown, I remember there was a post and there was a little bit of interest there of people, oh, let's do another season, and this is the time to recruit. And people talked to me about that, like, oh, you missed it, you should have recruited then, like, because we're playing again now. But there wasn't a community active at all then. Like that tournament ended in February, I think, and then in the early summer, people were saying try to bring it back, but people weren't playing. There wasn't any interest.
So that's
There
kind of
wasn't anything
the
to bring them to.
Yeah,
Is the thing is
exactly.
when you think about recruiting, you can't just show them the game and hope that they just keep playing. If there's nothing to keep, there were no leagues to keep them there. Like we
Exactly.
said, the LHL's so far gone that we wouldn't be interested in, or at least we wouldn't have been interested in doing season 20, like people suggested during the lockdown. They said do a lockdown season. It's just we're not gonna just do an LHL season for the sake of doing an LHL season. Like
Yeah,
people have to be ready, and there has to be a community around it.
and that's a really good point, which I didn't bring up, and that's something that, take a look at the big recruitment waves we had for season 18 and season 15. You can see it clearly on the graph here on the screen. Both of those were our best seasons by far at 150 and 149 signups. Our next closest after that was 127, which is a big drop off. That's like what, 20%, 15%, some shit. I can't do the math that quickly. So whatever, 1/6, whatever that is, 18. Um, so you could clearly see like we had a bunch of people brought in, but if you think about it, that's just the number of people who stayed, which means there were a lot of other people that would have looked at the game and didn't try it out and didn't stay and didn't hang around for a portion of time. And I distinctly remember both of those cases getting a lot of people that would come onto the subreddit or post on our recruitment thread and be like, "Why is the game so dead?" And to us, that's the peak of what we had for player base. And what you have to consider is, these are other players that are, at the time, I don't want to use an example of like Valorant as like, a recent one that has a ton of player base to it, but like let's say League of Legends back then was a big one. CS:GO is starting to sort of come into its own. Dota 2, some of the bigger online games back then, right? You look at a game like that has hundreds of thousands of concurrent players, and then you come to a game like Hockey Question Mark and there's two servers where there are games going on if you're lucky. It's like,
At 9 o'clock at night,
yeah,
maybe.
like peak playing time, and it's like, holy crap, there's nobody that plays this game. Why is it already so dead? And to have gone out and recruited people during the quarantine, like you said, if they log on and there's, maybe two people practicing by themselves in different servers and zero games happening, why would any of them stick around? And that's something to ask yourself all of us had to have get recruited at one point, right? Would you have stuck around in the game if there was nobody to play with? Like if you showed up the first, 3 days after the recruitment and at no point did a full game happen, would you ever have stuck around? And I think you're being disingenuous if you answer that with a yes, because why would you have? Like, I don't think any of us would have. There would have been no reason to. So it's not as simple as just saying, oh, do the recruitment. Now's the perfect time. There's got to be something to recruit them to. And every time we did a recruitment, we typically did it towards the end of a season too. So they could come in and they could see, the LHL playoffs going on and see like, oh, this is the pinnacle of the player base. And then they could see the RSL playoffs going on. And then later on for season 15, they could see the JSL playoffs going on. So they could sort of see the different tiers of competition. They could see sort of how they stack up and slot in. And they could see the level of infrastructure that we had built around the game and the level of which that we took it seriously despite the lack of players there. And that on its own is a big selling point to people that have a base interest in the game to see that there's something worth practicing for and something worth playing for, and it helps them set goals to strive for, which I'm sure is something both you and I did back when we just joined. So
Yep. Probably different set of players we were looking at, but yeah, same thing. As you see these players, and you're like, oh wow, I want to be like them. And you find out about the leagues, you're like, oh my god, like look at how much Dial and Matt are scoring, or whatever it was when I joined. And you think, wow, that's crazy. I could get into these leagues, I can play. And if you join and there's no leagues, or if you're joining on the promise of, well, we might do some in the future.
yeah,
We
yeah.
haven't in 2 years, a year and a
We're on
half at
we're
the
on
time.
break right
Yeah,
now for the last two
yeah,
years, but don't worry, something's
yeah.
coming soon, I promise. That is just such an empty
Yeah.
promise, you know?
It's hard enough to get people to play for themselves, let alone get people on and
Oh,
like to
absolutely.
play for others and get this, like this Friday night hockey thing. Like I'm getting like people are helpful. Anytime I have questions, like if I'm worried about something, I can ask you or I can ask Austin or Crab or Juice or Kiwi or whoever. There's people that'll answer, but really, I'm doing it myself. There's no real, I don't think, motivation for anybody else right now. Who like nobody's really trying to push this game, and keep it going. And I think
Exactly.
it would have been really hard to do that for new guys and bring back the old players to do LHL. Like there's so much focus would have been lost trying to do two things at once, sort of, because you're not just recruiting
We don't have
new
the
guys, you got to
infrastructure to do that.
re-recruit.
Yeah, we don't have the
Yeah, you have
infrastructure
to
to do that.
re-recruit the old
Every
guys to help
time,
them.
exactly. And every time we brought in new players, we would do prospect tournaments. We had the JSL going on. Shortly after season 8 or for season 8, it was right around then was when we started the JSL. Um,
That is, yeah, that's right around there. I
like
think right after
we had
season 9.
specific BOC that were assigned to handle those leagues to split up their responsibilities to help make sure that every person is getting maybe not the level of individual focus they need, but is getting an environment to sort of foster them and give them a place to enjoy the game, or at least attempt to enjoy the game, depending on what team they got
As
on
much as you
anyway.
can.
So yep. um, so yeah, not having that is, I mean, you're dead in the water right there. And that's why when I said earlier, bringing back the game requires these two things, bringing in new people, but also bringing back old people. We have to bring back the old people to set up some kind of community to build around. And until that happens to an extent that we could get a league going, we'll never be able to bring in new people to say like, hey, come check this out. Come check out what we have going on here. And, it might have been long enough now that we could go back and post our hockey again and start, getting some feedback. It's probably been like 2.5 years since we've done that. Start getting more responses again. We might have the ability to do that, but we don't have anything right now to show for it.
Yeah.
So that
We're
has
not
to
we're not
be
recruiting them to anything.
exactly, that has to be step one. And we're getting closer to that. I think at some point, if we really want to make a push for that, and I say we as in not just you and I, Tony, but we as in anybody that's playing the game actively at the moment, we need to be pushing our other friends to come back and play, even if it's just for, a little, um, to sort of artificially inflate that a little bit. Um, but also bring them back to see if there's something we can do to force back another competitive season. And even then, you have to discuss whether or not it's worth doing almost, because if this is just going to be a one-off and it's just going to be a one season type thing, is it really worth doing that? is it
Yeah,
really worth
like
trying to have a big recruitment wave so that we can have like, one more season or two more seasons and then bail again? Like, I don't know if that's really worth the effort.
yeah. I've had that suggested of do the post say the final LHL season. It's like you could get the signups. Like yeah, you could get the signups if you call it the last one. Everybody come, but like, what's the point? Why would
Well,
you?
yeah,
Why
what do
just
we
do one?
gain?
Why
Yeah,
even do one?
yeah. What's the point if you're gonna only do one? Like
Yeah, there's
why?
no. Yeah,
We've all at this point moved on from that level of playing the game anyway. Why bring it back if you're just going to do it once? If you're going to bring it back, you're going to bring it back to establish something and set it up for, at least a couple of seasons to be able to get more out of it. So yeah,
squeeze a year in.
I'm completely on board with that. I think it'd be silly to bring it back just to be like, oh well,
Here it is,
we
the
did
last one.
yeah. It's like okay, cool. Everybody have fun. Nice to see you again for this 3 month span. Have a good life. Bye. Like,
Yeah.
where do we go from there? Okay, so before I get into the next topic, anything else you want to touch on here? Did we cover all of this?
Feel like we probably did.
Okay. So the next topic I wanted to get into then, which is just a slight evolution of this in terms of like how could we get it back? Um, there's the potential of us never coming back to HQM in this capacity, but us instead moving to a new game entirely. And it feels almost like a meme saying that with the number of times we've heard this, right? New versions of hockey, new random people that have come in, like the guy who came onto the subreddit the other day or a couple days ago talking about building um, like a first person game that's meant to be done in VR. Or like that first person hockey guy from 2 or 3 years ago or whatever that showed up and started
For
making
four
that.
years ago or whatever.
Yep, and then Omaha I think took a stab at recreating it and then ended up making his own kind of like separate game, the Hoser hockey
He
one.
just updated it.
Yes, he did. And then Stu tried to recreate the game at one point,
Matt,
and yep, Matt as well. I know Baba attempted to do some kind of thing with that. I think DVD may have taken a shot at it at some point. The only one who's ever really made a like true legitimate attempt and gotten close is Payne. And Payne still has his game that he is from what I've told or been told, actively. I say that in quotes because I think it kind of comes and goes in terms of waves of development on it. He's the only one who seems to be like close to having something that might be, good and fun to play and actually a potential successor to what we've been working with here in 55 UH at this point. I don't
thank you,
know what
Bob.
the status is of
Uh,
that right now.
I
Perhaps
do
you
know
know
the
better.
status, and I am not 100% sure what he wants shared. Like I've never asked him if like I've never so, but I do know he is working extremely hard right now. Like right, and this is a wave that he's kind of been on. I'm not a I haven't really been in with it, and like I haven't really had the inside scoop on it until recently, like the last few
He's kept a
days
lot of it under
recently.
wraps for a lot of
Mhm.
the development of this. So
And it's sad. It's not. He. I will say that he told me that this like push. He's gonna work extremely hard here, and it's sort of his. I think his last attempt, but he thinks he can do it. Like he thinks he's close to being able to actually get this. I mean, not that the game's close, but he is personally close to being able to do this, to pull it off. But I think if he's not able to here, uh, this might be his last try at it, or his last real try in this development. At least that's what
yeah,
he thinks.
which
Like he's worked so hard for it, and like he's happy with the fact that there's something that resembles a community around it right now, and that we're all very open to if the game gets as good or better than HQM, we'll
for
make the
sure,
switch right there,
yeah, for
no
sure.
question.
And I mean, it's almost the type of thing where even if it's a little bit worse, or if we have to like really readjust, it might be worth switching to it anyway if there's any hope
Hmm.
of prolonging the community. Um,
Yep.
I I don't want to be like overwhelmingly negative or anything like that, but the game is dead right now. There's no other way to say that. The game is dead right now. We're starting to get some momentum back, but I personally don't think we're ever going to see enough returning faces to give us enough of a baseline to be able to try and improve from. And I don't think we're ever going to be able to sort of crawl out of this ditch that we're in terms of the struggles we have to face of not having a proper game developer, all the things I mentioned earlier, right? Having to overcome that is just tremendously hard to do. It's something that I would imagine most other grassroots communities and games have never done. I personally don't know of any, but then again, a lot of games like hockey are so small that I probably wouldn't anyway. So,
Yeah, imagine the game that we'd all really actually enjoy and want to play. It's going on. It's in the exact same boat as this game right now.
yep, yep.
Oh
But
well.
yeah, so I don't want to like be like a Debbie Downer, but it's highly likely that we never are able to sort of come back from this, and that
No.
the
Not
the
not
hole
to
that
what people I think expect if we
yes,
were to come
yes,
back.
agreed. And I think the hole that we're in to an extent was always an eventuality. I don't think there's much we could have reasonably accomplished or done to change that. We might have been able to delay it a little bit longer, but at the end of the day,
This
the
was coming.
the nails were already in the coffin for HQM from day one. As soon as it was never going to be developed into anything more, uh, that really was the end of it, and we did a tremendous job prolonging it for as long as we did. But that really was, in all honesty, the end of it. And I personally think to maintain the community, to maintain what we have here, moving to a new game is the most likely option of continuing our success or expanding it. And if we could bring it to a new game like Pains, somebody who's invested in the community, invested in the game, and as a game developer, somebody who would be willing to actually put in time to help develop it further, to help work with the community to make it what we want to be, and to help us in terms of being able to push the game further into the eyes of more people, aka putting it on Steam, stuff like that, tweeting about it, retweeting a lot of the things that the community are doing, which are things that never really happened with Cryptic. So, um, but yeah, so I think that's really the direction that we have to go to give us the best option for survival at this point in time. And I don't want to get anybody's hopes up about the game that Pain is making. It's very difficult to create something that's a similar enough experience to be worth playing as to what
Yeah, no pressure,
HQM,
Pain.
yeah, as to what HQM is. So I don't want to put the pressure on him, and I don't want to set expectations for the community at large that is still playing to be able to come into that and rely on that as like, oh, this is definitely going to happen, because again, the likelihood is that it doesn't. The likelihood is that we don't get something that is worth continuing, and that's not meant to be a criticism of Pain in any fashion, but it's really hard. It's really hard to recreate this, and he'll be the first one to tell you that, I'm sure. He'll be the first one to say that like making something that we're going to want to play is lower
Difficult.
probability to say the
Very
least.
difficult.
So, but yeah, so I think that's the direction we have to go.
Yeah.
And
The
if that
you know
comes
the
out, I think we could get a really big
yeah,
wave
yeah.
of returning veterans to come back to the point where, like, to try it out for a season, to the point where I think that would be a prime time to like get people to come in, like recruit, and say like, look at this new game. We don't even have to mention HQM to the new recruits, right? But say, look at this new game, bring in a whole bunch of people, and if it's a new game, you get a lot of people that are kind of like on the same level. Even those of us with experience will have to kind of relearn the minutia of the new game. So that would be the premier time to do it. And there is a chance. There is a chance for that to happen, or for that to unfold in a positive way for us. But
Yeah, the only other way, which is even less likely, but it could have, the only way I would see it coming back, and it's funny because you look at the signups here and it looks so bad. for Friday Night Hockey. Even I mean, like relative to what the LHL was, but we're at the same number of people as season one. You'd have to have what's left of us here willing to kind of go through all of that happened to get, but I mean, most of you guys, most of the people playing here, not most, but a good handful are people who have been playing for since the beginning or early on at least. So like these people it would have to be you and Crab and Otto. Like, do you want to go through all of that again? Rebuild kind of, and it's totally different because of how long everybody's been playing at this point. It's so unlikely to be able to recruit people to get to our level. And
Which is why a new game
yeah,
is almost a positive thing because it kind of
yeah,
resets the
exactly.
bar a little bit.
Yeah.
It's definitely having to relearn a lot of stuff is not something that I'd be looking forward to at all. But for the sake
No.
of bringing the community back and rebuilding to an extent, like that is a sacrifice that I think is worth making. And I would certainly hope that people like Crab and like Otto would feel the same way. As frustrating as it will be for us to have to relearn a lot of that. Um, it's it's a it's a necessary evil, um, to make it worth it for those new people too. So
Yep. It's we all whatever happens is if we want the game back to what it used to be, we all have to kind of get on board with whatever the next thing to come is, whether it's Payne's game or whether it's if we get enough people interested here that they want to start doing competitive leagues, and if you want to get that to LHL level, you have to be willing to kind of put some work in. You can't just sit back and hope that Dial does everything for you or whatever. If you want LHL, really, we need more people
yeah,
put in the
well, that's
effort.
that's what I was gonna
You
say. Like
know,
it's not just about the leadership effort; it's about the
I'm not saying they
bodies.
have to. Yeah, I'm
No,
not
no,
saying
no.
they
Yeah,
have to. Like, I'm not telling people start doing it. I'm saying if you
for
want
sure, for
there to
sure.
be a change and you want it to get back, like you got to get people signed up. You have to play, and you have to kind of take on a leadership role and
Yep.
whatever it takes.
And it's purely about the bodies. I mean, we need the people. Even if you aren't contributing in a leadership aspect like that, we need the people playing and interested in playing, which, gives question to whether or not for season 4 of the Friday Night Hockey, return thing that you've been doing,
Hmm.
is that something we post on Reddit about and open that up to more people and see how that goes. So that's definitely a discussion for another time, but almost a necessity or almost an eventual necessity to rebuild up the community numbers to a point that we can actually build something out of it. So
Hmm.
anyway, okay, I think we've beaten this topic to death pretty good. I know we've circled back
Hmm.
on a number of things multiple times, so I apologize if we repeated ourselves too many times on some things, but yeah, so
Sorry for lagging out at some point there.
I
I'm
it wasn't
I'm
too
out in the
bad.
sticks today.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I think you lagged out once or twice, but we got most of it, which is good. Um, so shouldn't have any troubles with that. But and we were able to keep it under an hour, which is great. So yeah,
Oh,
so
we
the
did?
plan, yes,
Perfect.
yeah. So the plan for this, as I mentioned at the start, is we want to kind of do a more steady release of sort of smaller segments like this, trying to keep it under an hour at max to talk about various things. It could be anything throughout LHL history. We're going to try to pick some different things every time to keep things fresh and keep things,
Pitch some.
exciting. Um,
If you're
so
listening, pitch it.
well, yeah, so we have a number of ideas that we are sort of prepared to go through, some better than others, but we would also like to be able to incorporate things that you guys want to listen to as well, or you guys would like to hear discussed. We've had a couple suggestions so far, but we are looking for things that are not just like oh, this happened, or oh, we can talk about this for 2 minutes. We're looking for things that we can, spend a good 15, 20 minutes having a discussion back and forth about, sort of diving into it. So, um, if there is anything that is a broader topic for us to touch on that you're interested in hearing about, please by all means comment on the YouTube video, comment in the Discord. I might throw
Message
this
us.
on Reddit, message us directly, whatever the case is. Just let us know because we're happy to take a look and start to answer some of those. We want it to be something that you want to listen to. So
Yeah.
get back to us with whatever feedback you have, and we'll try to incorporate that as best we can, and hopefully get another one of these out within a week or so of this one releasing. So with that, thank you for being here, Tony. Thank you to everybody who
Yeah.
listened to our last 3.5 hour return special. And for everybody that's going to listen to this full 1 hour sort of second session, we'll call it. I don't really know what else to describe it as. The sequel.
The 2020 series.
Yep. So yeah, we will see you guys next time.